Thank you, Mr. President. Every year, we go through the same routine, the same tired resolutions villainizing Israel, laying bare the UN's bias and prejudice for all to see. But let me remind you how this all started. 77 years ago, this assembly voted on the United Nations partition plan, a moment that offered Israelis and Palestinians alike the chance to live side by side in peace. Israel said yes. The Arab world said no. They rejected coexistence, choosing instead to declare war on the newborn Jewish state. Since that day, this assembly has maintained a neurotic obsession with what you call the question of Palestine. Over decades, the UN and many of its member states have encouraged and cultivated Palestinian rejectionism, violence, incitement, and false narrative of victimhood. In 1947, the Palestinians said no. In 1967, they again said no. In 2000, they said no. In 2008, once again, they said no. Time and again, opportunities for peace were met with rejection. Palestinian so-called leaders have chosen conflict every time, and this assembly rewarded them for it. You have reinforced the belief that peace can be postponed and violence is acceptable. Where was the assembly in 2005 when Israel left Gaza, pulling out entirely and leaving the Palestinians to determine their own future? Where were you in 2006 when Hamas violently seized control of the Gaza Strip, transforming it into the world's largest terrorist base? Where were you on October 7th when Hamas mobilized and executed a mass murder? And where are you today, as 100 hostages remain in the most horrifying conditions imaginable? October 7th was not just a day of horror. It was a moment that exposed the true face of Hamas and their allies, who are exclusively committed to extermination and cruelty. Over 1,200 murdered, thousands injured, women raped, children executed, families burned alive in their homes. These atrocities should have shocked the conscience of the world. Yet, to this day, this assembly remains silent. Over the past week, this assembly has passed countless resolutions targeting Israel, yet not a single resolution condemning Hamas, not a single word denouncing the October 7th massacre, and nothing about the hostages still suffering in unimaginable conditions. Shame on you. Instead of confronting these crimes, the UN continues to enable Palestinian rejectionism. This betrayal of peace has no end that we can foresee, unfortunately. But we see very clearly where it begins. It begins in the classrooms. If there is any doubt about the systematic indoctrination of hatred, allow me to share an example of a Palestinian fifth grade textbook. This textbook was published by the Palestinian Authority. This textbook was distributed to schools funded and supported by the UN and its member states. You, the members of the UN, the righteous nations pointing critical fingers at Israel, paid for this propaganda. Let me quote Dalal Mughrabi, a name etched in glory, led with an unmatched bravery. In her footsteps, this textbook teaches the children to aspire to, and I quote, heroism and martyrdom. You see her picture. This is what the Palestinians are teaching 10-year-olds. 10-year-old Palestinian children are being told that the path to greatness lies in murder, that death is preferable to life, and that slaughtering innocent civilians is a source of a national pride. That's the Palestinian Authority, it's not Hamas, don't be mistaken. They are explicitly taught in this very textbook that to die as a terrorist is, quote, far better than a life of comfort and ease. Let me tell you who was the mastermind, who was Dalal Mughrabi. She was the mastermind of the 1978 Coastal Road Massacre, a terrorist attack that left 38 innocent civilians dead, including 13 children. Her group hijacked a bus and murdered its passengers. Yet, in textbooks funded by the United Nations, and therefore by many nations in this hall, she is held up as a national hero, a role model, a symbol for children to imitate. Dalal is among many, many so-called heroes listed in the textbook for children. They include many murderers and many Hamas terrorists. This is not education, it is indoctrination. It is a deliberate theft of Palestinian children's future, robbing them of hope and tying them to a legacy of hatred and despair. Still, the UN and its members continue its obsession with Israel. For almost 80 years, you have perfected your obsession with blaming Israel while you blindly fund hatred and violence. If you want more examples, simply look to UNRWA, which uses this textbook in its schools. UNRWA is a unique agency created not to solve a problem, but to preserve one. Over the years, billions of dollars have been invested into UNRWA. Even before October 7th, UNRWA had failed its mandate, both professionally and morally. While intended to provide social and educational services, it has become one of the largest promoters and participants in violence and hatred. I saw the tweet of the spokesperson of UNRWA from like 10 minutes ago. He's worried about his reputation. Well, that's too late. UNRWA's failures extend into every aspect of its aspiration. Its schools have been used as weapon stores. Its facilities converted into launching pads for rocket attacks. Its employees moonlighting as terrorists. We have videos of UNRWA employees invading Israel on October 7th, kidnapping Israelis. And who signed the paycheck? You did, the UN. Time and again, we have presented evidence of these abuses, only to be met with silence from this assembly. This is not just negligence, it is complicity. The role of an aid organization is to ease suffering and build hope, but UNRWA has become a shield for terror, prolonging the conflict it claims to address. UNRWA operates hand in hand with Hamas and its diplomatic proxy, the Palestinian Authority. Together, they entrench hatred, glorify violence, and promote conflict. Consider the Palestinian Authority, the so-called moderate leaders. We listen to them. But true leadership would make a distinction between itself and Hamas. It would condemn the atrocities of October 7th. I listened to Mr. Mansour. I haven't heard him mentioning Hamas. True leadership would lay the groundwork for peace through education. Instead, the PA glorifies terrorists, names schools and streets after murderers, and provides a play-to-slay policy that turns blood into profit, paying terrorists and their families to murder. The more you kill, the more money you get in your bank account. Just imagine what could be achieved if this assembly took a different path. Imagine if the billions spent on promoting hatred and violence were redirected toward building schools that teach peace, hospitals that heal, and the infrastructure that connects rather than divides. Mr. President, 77 years ago, when the partition plan was proposed, Israel chose peace. The other side chose war. That pattern of rejectionism continues to this day because of the UN's indulgence of incitement and its refusal to demand accountability. Israel is a nation of peace. We pray 3 times a day for peace. We have demonstrated our commitment and ability to peace through our treaties with 6 Arab nations. We used to fight with them. And you saw the Abraham Accords also. We hope that many other nations, God's will, Be'ezrat Hashem, inshallah, that more countries will join the Abraham Accords very soon. But if you truly want peace, it begins with dismantling this infrastructure of hate and the glorification of terror. Stop rewarding murder. Dismantle UNRWA. Hold the Palestinian leadership accountable. 77 years is long enough. It is time for the UN and its members to wake up, stop being collaborators in violence, and start being partners in peace. Israel will always remain committed to peace, but make no mistake, we are unwavering in our determination to stand firm, to protect our nation, to defeat those who seek to destroy us, and to ensure the security and future of our people. Most of all, we will leave no stone unturned, no effort spared, until all of our hostages are freed and returned to their families. That is our promise. Thank you, Mr. President.